Hello students. So today we are going to start with the chapter of our environment. As it's a very common terminology, this word environment, it's a very common term we use in our day-to-day life, a working environment, the environment, the basic environment that we talk about, the natural environment, the house environment, the school environment. So we discuss about these topics. So this is a very common terminology that we use. So we will in this chapter we'll discuss about the various factors that interact with each other and form a environment. So first is what is a ecosystem. So let me give you a brief idea about ecosystem. A ecosystem is basically a self-contained unit of a living things and non-living environment. So living things like plants, animals and decomposers, and their non-living environment is soil, air and water. So it is a self-contained unit of living things and non-living things. The examples of ecosystems are grassland, forest, desert, mountain, pond, lake, river and a sea. So any organisms such as plants, animals, microorganisms and human beings as well as physical surroundings interact with each other and maintain a balance in nature. I told you it's basically an interaction between a human living and a non-living surroundings. All the interacting organisms in an area together with the non-living constitutes the environment of the environment form an ecosystem. So the interaction of the non-living, the interaction of the living beings with that of the non-living environment, this constitutes the ecosystem. Thus, an ecosystem consists of biotic components comprising living organisms and abiotic components comprising physical factors like temperature, rainfall, water, wind, soil, and minerals. For example, if you visit a garden, you'll find different plants such as grasses, trees, flower bearing plants like rose, jasmine, sunflower, animals like frogs, insects and birds. All these living organisms interact with each other and their growth, reproduction and other activities are affected by the abiotic components of the ecosystem. So a garden is an ecosystem. Other types of ecosystems are forest, ponds and lakes. And these are natural ecosystems while gardens and crop fields are human-made artificial ecosystems. So we talked about ecosystem. Ecosystem is a self-contained unit in which a living organism, living beings interact with non-living organisms, and this interaction is known as this interaction basically helps the living organisms to survive, to reproduce, to grow in the ecosystem with the help of the non-living or abiotic environment such as rain, water, soil, temperature and everything. So we have seen in the earlier classes that organisms can be grouped as producers, consumers and decomposers according to the manner in which they obtain their sustenance from the environment. So basically there are three kinds of organisms in a ecosystem. One is a producer, then is a consumer and the third is a decomposer. So these all three kinds of organisms perform their own functions to sustain in an environment. Let us recall what we have learned through the self-sustaining ecosystem created by us above. Which organisms can make organic compounds like sugar and starch from inorganic substances using the radiant energy of the sun in the presence of the chlorophyll. All green plants and certain bacteria which can produce food by photosynthesis come under this category and are known as producers. So the producers are basically the plants which prepare their own food. Organisms depend on producers either directly or indirectly for their sustenance. These organisms are known as consumers, either directly from producer or indirectly by feeding on other consumers are called the consumers. And the consumers can be classified variously as herbivores, carnivores and omnivores and parasites. We have discussed this in detail. So now in the next class we'll start with food chain and webs. So far we have discussed about what is the ecosystem, how ecosystem prevails, how living organisms interact with non-living factors such as soil, water, rainfall, temperature, and they survive. It helps in the growth, in the reproduction, in the survival of the living organisms. And basically there are two kinds of components: biotic and abiotic. Biotic is basically the living components, and abiotic is the non-living components. So in the next class we'll start with food chains and webs.